Sure. Are you? Oh, then no. I love dance. You calling me? Thank you. I never got all of you. Enough out of you. Okay? Like really. JC.
You'd be wired. If you don't, they will keep it. I don't know what am I like? What is this? Red. I don't know. No blue? Yeah, what about me too? Yeah, I get tired. Oh, I love that guy. I wish he left this fucking time.
I'm actually starting Shopify. I'm jumping on stage. I'm right here.
Oh, look at you. You want a stick? Buddy, I've been fucking wired off these things. I'll check your stick. And you know when you go out with ice cream, you shoot fucking socks to the crowd and hot dogs. I'm gonna shoot fucking pixie sticks all over the place. Everyone's all dressed up in suits. So funny. These lectures. It's like launching hot dogs and shit. You get a hot dog. Nothing, so it's not fucking purposes. I think they put this shit in the spot.
Maybe I'll start mixing vodka water and a pixie stick. Vodka water and a pixie stick.
Oh, talking about this is so much else.
Snow outside. I was like, wow.
You gotta get window. really solid. I'm not being crazy though. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what it is. No, no, not really. But I'm moving to the gym, I'm rather, I'm finding a wife, I'm moving there, and I'm trying to help her. Presentation, obviously, this. That's where all your finding
Good evening. First, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge our history. Our beautiful Bishop's campus is located on the traditional territory of the Abenaki First Nation. We honor the Abenaki as the traditional stewards of the land on which we gather today. My name is Zoe Whitfield. I'm a fourth-year business student at the Williams School of Business and past president of the Bishop's University Commerce Society. Welcome to the fourth and final Donald Lecture of the 2018-2019 series. This lecture is made possible by the generous support of Bishop's alumnus, John Donald. We are extremely fortunate to have the chance to hear from a variety of accomplished speakers this year. Many thanks to Mr. Donald for helping to foster a spirit of debate and intellectual curiosity at Bishop's University. I would also like to welcome our alumni, parents of current students, as well as colleagues at the three Maple League campuses, Acadia, Mount Allison, and St. Francis Xavier Universities, who are able to participate via live stream. So I would also like to mention one other item before we begin. As you know, our Library Learning Commons was extensively renovated in the 2017-2018 season and officially reopened last fall. The Library Learning Commons project is a finalist in the Prix d'Excellence de l'Ordre des Architectes du Québec. Our architectural partner, LeMay, have told us that this type of project is rarely in the running for these awards. There is a public voting period until March 31st at midnight. The winner of the Prix du Public will be announced at the Gala des Prix de l'OAAQ on April 5th. You can vote via the link on the Bishop's Facebook page or by using your phone to take a photo of the QR code on the screen above. So we actually use Spotify's QR code generator to add the QR code. So that's pretty cool. So it is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's Donald Lecture speaker. Harley Finkelstein is an entrepreneur, lawyer, and chief operating officer of Shopify. He founded his first company at the age of 17 while a student at McGill. Harley completed his law degree as well as his MBA at the University of Ottawa, where he co-founded the JD MBA Student Society and the Canadian MBA Oath. Harley is an advisor at Felicis Ventures and Omers Ventures and is one of the dragons on CBC's Next Gen Den. Recently, Harley was inducted into the Order of Ottawa and he received the Canadian Angel Investor of the Year Award and Canada's Top 40 Under 40. From 2014 to 2017, Harley was on the board of the C100, and in December 2017, he was appointed for a 5-year term to the Board of Directors of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Finkelstein and Principal Goldblum.
Thanks, Billy. Well done.
You had one job.
Couldn't even get that right. All right. Am I on?
We had a great talk backstage about what a QR code is. Starting tomorrow, you're going to see QR codes all over campus, everywhere.
So, thank you all for coming. Thank you to Harley for being here. I thought I should get the most embarrassing thing out of the way at the outset.
About me or you?
Well, it's about me.
Okay.
So, as I told Harley when we invited him to give this Donald Lecture, when our students nominated him, I had no idea who he was. Truth is, I don't think I probably knew the difference between Shopify and Spotify. But our students are always certainly ahead of me, and it was a great suggestion, and I was very, very grateful to Harley for agreeing to do this. We, as you've heard, sit on the board of CBC Regio Canada together. I'll let you guess which of the two of us was recruited to the board because of our knowledge of the digital world. So in preparing for tonight, Harley and I talked about this, and we agreed that rather than having him give a formal address, I asked if he would give us some photos, and we would just kind of use the photos to navigate through his life and his career. So that's what we're going to do.
Do you have the remote?
I was just about to say, where's the remote?
I think the remote's over here. Thank God I'm here. There you go.
Thank you.
I can do this myself if you want. I'm good.
No, this is good. So, all right. So the way this is going to work, Harley, you're actually going to be able to. I know this is a stunning technology, but you should be able to see the photos in front of you here. So let's start with that one.
So I want to be clear. You can take pictures or put this on Instagram or Twitter or anywhere you want. I will say, though, that some of the photos you're going to see tonight I've actually never shown before. And the only reason I've agreed to show them is because I really like Michael. And so by proxy, I'm opening up my kimono to all of you to show you an inside look into my life. And that is me at about 12 years old. I have incredible fashion sense, as you can see. Where do you want to start with that?
So, well, where did you grow up, and what was your first experience as an entrepreneur?
So, I was born in Montreal in 1983, and I had a fairly normal, regular life living in Montreal in a suburb called Dollar-des-Ormeaux.
Okay.
And when I was about 12 years old, I began to get invited. By background, I'm Jewish, and at 12 years old, you begin to get invited to bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs. When a Jewish person turns 12 for a girl, she has a bat mitzvah, it's a ceremony, and 13 is a bar mitzvah. And I began to get invited to these bar mitzvahs. And at all these bar mitzvah and bar mitzvah parties, there were these DJs there. And I just thought these DJs were the coolest people ever.
Right.
First of all, they looked cool. They had these cool headphones. But more importantly, they themselves were facilitating a party. They were playing the right music to get the people going. And I just thought that was just such an incredible thing. And I remember going home from probably my second or third of these events and telling my mom and dad, I'm going to be a DJ. And, right? Because look at this guy. Isn't he? He looks like a DJ. And there was no email at the time. This is, back in 1995 or something like that. And so I started calling DJ companies in Montreal and saying, my name is Harley Finkelstein, and I want to be a DJ. And of course they would say, great, how many, what kind of experience do you have? And I would say, I have no experience whatsoever, but I'm going to be a great DJ. And after doing this 3 or 4 or 5 times, I realized that this is not going to work. First of all, as you can see, I was 12 years old, but I looked like I was 6. So they weren't going to hire me. I had no experience. There wasn't YouTube. I couldn't teach myself how to DJ as easily as I would have liked. And so I thought maybe the solution to my problem would be, let's start my own DJ company and hire myself. And I did that. I started a little DJ company. One thing that I would say that was very helpful was anytime I had a crazy idea about starting a little company or a little business, my parents didn't have very much money, so they couldn't help me financially. But almost every single idea, my father and mother would make me business cards with that business name, which gave me this very silly confidence that maybe that was possible. And so when I was 13 years old, I began to, I set up this little DJ company. I called it Executive Sounds, because of course you would. And I rented some equipment. I had friends that I knew had older siblings that had some equipment, and I taught myself how to DJ. And that year, my family moved to South Florida, to a place but an hour north of Miami. And I set up this DJ. I continued my DJ business in Florida, and effectively spent the next 4 years DJing more than 400 parties in Florida and then in Montreal as well. And that was really my very first business. I know the bio said that I started my company at 17, but that was really my first business, was this DJ company. And I don't think I made very much money. I think the rental of the equipment was like $200, and I think I charged clients like $150. So business students in the room will realize that is a horrible profit margin. Not too different from a technology company. But nonetheless, it was a great experience. And starting a business, being an entrepreneur, was the solution to this problem, which was that I want to be a DJ, and nobody was going to hire me.
So did you have role models? Were your people in your family entrepreneurs?
Sort of. One of the things that that I always found interesting about living in Montreal was a city of immigrants. My parents, my dad had immigrated from Hungary in 1956 during the Hungarian Revolution. Canada had let in 40,000 Hungarian immigrants during a really tough time in Hungary. And so my grandparents and my mom and dad, they were entrepreneurs, quote unquote, but they didn't call themselves entrepreneurs. Right. They called themselves providers for the family. And my grandfather had a little egg stand, which still stands to this day at the Jean Talon market in Montreal. It's called Le Capitaine. And he was an egg vendor at the Jean Talon market for his entire life until he passed away a couple years ago. So I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I did see people around me that were incredibly resourceful, that solved problems by taking it into their own hands. And I know where we're going next, so I'm just going to say out loud, I was a really weird kid.
Well, let's show people that. There's something I have to do to get the video going.
Just click one more time.
Hi, Jeff. It's Chip, and Jeff also
Had a great time tonight, Jeff.
And Jeff, aka Pyro.
So I was a weird kid. That was at one of those bar mitzvahs where I saw a microphone and I just felt that I had to grab that microphone. So the role models that I had at that time weren't necessarily role models that were successful or per se, but they were people that I admired, like grandparents and parents. And through that video, you can sort of see the next set of pictures, which, by the way, people at Shopify would pay tons of money to see, and it is shocking that I'm showing it tonight, but I like you a great deal. So that is me as a DJ, DJing more than 500 parties. Don't clap at that. Don't you dare clap at that. But I was a DJ and an MC, and I did about 400 or 500 parties between the age of 13 and probably about 17 or 18 years old, and I absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful, wonderful way to spend my time.
So you survive adolescence somehow, and you end up going to McGill.
I do, yeah. So I entered McGill. I finished high school, 17, and I moved back to Montreal to go to McGill when I was 17. And this was 2001. This was September 2001. So this is kind of a weird time in the world. September 11th happened, which kind of changed everything. But the stock market also had crashed shortly thereafter. You had the tech bubble burst, and things were really, really rough. And I remember about 4 or 5 weeks into school at McGill, my mom called and said, effectively, the family's been wiped out. That we have no more money. We never had a lot of money to begin with, but we have no money. And my mom had said, you should come back down to South Florida and move back home because, like, we can't even pay, anything for you. And I decided that I didn't want to leave Montreal. Being a young person living on your own for the first time is a pretty amazing thing. And I really felt that, I don't know, maybe I was stubborn, naive. I thought that I can kind of figure it out on my own. So I decided that I would try, I'd get a couple jobs. I started DJing again to make some money. That was a little bit difficult while going to school. I got a job at a travel agency selling vacations. But none of these things were actually, none of these things allowed me to pay the bills well. And I decided that I would once again use entrepreneurship to solve the problem. The previous problem when I was 13 was I wanted to be a DJ and no one would hire me. The new problem would be, how do I support myself while concurrently going to school? And a friend of mine was on the student council at McGill University. And he said that McGill spent something like $25,000 a semester on promotional t-shirts. I don't know if you guys have this, but your first day of school for frosh or 101 week or orientation, everyone gets a bag and a hat and a t-shirt. And this friend of mine was on the student council said, if you're looking to start a business, it sounds like the t-shirt business might be a good idea. Now, what you also have to understand is the Montreal, what they call the schmutza business, which is really the clothing business in Montreal, is iconic. Some of the greatest clothing companies and apparel companies on the planet were built out of what's called the Chabanel, which is a street in Montreal, the Chabanel Garment District. And so I knew that I didn't really have any experience in t-shirts, but I knew that the advantage that I would have was I was a pretty good networker. Maybe I can meet the right people. And so I thought about this idea, and I ended up deciding to buy a small t-shirt printing machine, a screen printer, and teaching myself how to print t-shirts. And I then went to McGill and said, hey, I'm here, I can make t-shirts for you, I'm a student here, what do you think? And they said, no. They said that we have a contract, I've had a contract with Gildan and Russell Athletics for a very long time, and even though we know you're a student and we want to support student entrepreneurship, fundamentally, it's just not, we're not going to give you a deal. Like, you have no experience, it doesn't make any sense. In 2001, there was another t-shirt company being built out of Montreal, which had already had a little bit of traction. It was called American Apparel. Yeah. And the guy behind American Apparel was a guy named Dov Charney. And I phoned up American Apparel, and I phoned up Dov and said, I need some tips, and what can you tell me? And I began to learn more and more about the t-shirt industry. I showed up in McGill again, McGill Student Council office, about a month later. And this time I basically went in with a very different pitch. It was, look, I am not as big as Russell Athletic or Gildan, but here's what I can do. One, I have no overhead, because I'm running the whole thing out of my apartment, my dorm room. So it's going to be really, really cheap, which is good. Two is, I am responsible unequivocally 100% for the t-shirt delivery. So if there's a problem, here's my cell phone number. What I also did was I realized that the way that procurement was happening with t-shirts around universities was someone would show up, usually in a terrible looking suit, and they would go through a catalog and show the student council officers or the treasurer or the procurement people pictures of what the shirts would look like. And I thought, well, I have a screen printing machine in my house. I can just print the shirts in advance of the order. And I would do these little mini fashion shows in the offices of the student council, and the models would actually be students that went to McGill. So they would actually see what the t-shirts would look like on students that would eventually get the t-shirts themselves.
Right.
And November 2001, I got my first t-shirt order from McGill. It was probably an $11,000 t-shirt order. And everything changed after that. It was, it was gratifying because I was able to support myself, but it was more important. I realized that I am going to be an entrepreneur the rest of my life. No matter what I do, will be around helping to build companies, helping others build companies, but entrepreneurship was going to be that thing. And I spent the next 4 years of undergrad studying a bit, but really building a t-shirt company. And by the time I was out of undergrad, I ended up changing to Concordia because at the time, McGill did not have night courses and virtual courses. And my business had grown big enough that I needed to be in the office a couple days a week. And so Concordia, which is the other school in Montreal, was totally okay with giving me night courses and virtual courses. And so I moved to Concordia. But by the time I had finished undergrad, there's about 98 universities in Canada. And I think about 40 to 50 of them were buying t-shirts from me.
Wow.
And it was the greatest thing ever. And so that was sort of my first real company.
When you think about your time as an undergrad, we got a lot. You're talking to a group of undergrads. Is there anything beyond the entrepreneurship piece that you take from your time as an undergrad? So first of all, it's relationships. Actually, I don't have my phone on me. I actually had a quote that I was going to read, but I left my phone backstage. But at Shopify, we use Slack, which is our communication tool. And I went on Slack this afternoon as I was coming here, and I said, how many of you, or have any of you gone to Bishop's? And tons of people at Shopify said, I did, it was an amazing experience. And so I asked 3 or 4 people for their favorite Bishop's story. And there was one in particular that I really liked, and it was really around the idea of her name was Allison. Allison had graduated 15 years ago from Bishop's, and she had basically said that because the school is smaller and has a smaller student body than a much larger university, that the relationship that she had cultivated during her time at Bishop's are not only people that she's still very close with, but have helped her in her entire career, that she's created an entire network, a multiplier network from her time at Bishop's. And for me, that rings really true. The relationships and the friendships that I built at undergrad, those are still my siblings in many ways to this day. The second thing actually that I didn't realize then, but I wish I would have realized then, was the onus is on me to pull whatever I think I needed out of that experience. So for example, I didn't take a philosophy course because I didn't know how that would fit into everything. And actually, I really wish I would have taken a philosophy course. And I didn't take a Canadian history course, even though I never took Canadian history because I went to school in the US. I wish I would have done that. And I think if I were to do it over again, what I probably would have done is realize that as a student, as an undergrad student, the onus is on me to figure out, to pull whatever I want out of that experience. And if I want to have a very rich experience, I need to pull more. And if I want to have a less rich experience, I would pull less. But I really looked at my undergrad as a means to an end to get my degree and move on. And I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I would have been more mindful of the opportunity that I had, that I'm surrounded by really smart people, really smart students and professors, and that all of you sitting in the audience right now can basically pull anything you want out of your time at Bishop's. I encourage you to do so. I did not do that, and I deeply regret it. So you get your undergrad degree, you got the successful t-shirt business. Why do you go to law school?
So one thing that I recognized during undergrad was the value of mentors. And I actually didn't know what a mentor was then. I used to call everybody my mentor. Anyone that would talk to me that I was impressed with was my mentor. That's not what a mentor is. For me, at this stage in my life, a mentor is someone who's who's making a commitment to me that on a monthly basis or on a bi-weekly basis, they are going to spend some time with me to help me, and hopefully I can contribute something back to them. And in undergrad, there were a couple people that were really took a mentorship role with me. One of them actually was, we were talking about Paperman's, was Ross Paperman. Oh, I DJ'd Ross Paperman's as someone that Michael and I both know.
He was dying to help you?
Yeah, he was dying to help me. He runs a funeral home, so there's a lot of jokes you can make. How's business? It's dead. But there were a bunch of people that really seemed to take a real vested interest in my success. And one of those people was a gentleman named Philip Reimer. And Phil Reimer was a lawyer in Ottawa at a big law firm called Denton's. He's a real estate lawyer. And he knew my situation. I think he almost felt bad for me that my parents weren't able to help me. And there was just something interesting about the relation dynamic that I had with him. And Phil effectively said to me in my final year of undergrad, your t-shirt business is really cool. You're making some money. But you have no competitive advantage. There's no moat around your business, what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett would call a moat. How are you going to defend your business against other competitors? And he said that in the same way that I was able to disrupt Russell Athletics and Gildan, anyone can disrupt me. And that if I wanted to be an entrepreneur that has a really big impact on the world, that builds a company that is sustainable but also changes the world and changes the way things are done, I needed to rethink my business. And he actually thought that the one thing that would make me a better entrepreneur would be law school. And he convinced me that to go to law school, not to become a lawyer, but to become a better entrepreneur. And he sort of looked at it as almost finishing school. And I said, cool, Phil, now what? What do I do? Like, where do I go? What do I do? And he decided in 2005, unrelated to him suggesting I go to law school, that in 2005 he would teach business law at the University of Ottawa, in the law school there. And I said, okay, I think you're probably right. I was 21 at the time when I finished undergrad. I said, I will go to law school. I will apply to University of Ottawa. That's where you're teaching. And I moved to Ottawa in 2005 to go to law school. And I was very clear with myself. In fact, I was clear with my classmates. And I think even some of my professors would probably tell you that I went in with this idea that whatever I'm going to take from this, it's going to always be around the journey, not just the destination. That I'm okay with becoming a lawyer, but I'm doing this because I want to use law school as the greatest acquisition of entrepreneurial skills. Meaning, I want to learn how to write better. I want to learn how to be more articulate. I want to learn about critical reasoning. I just want to be more well-rounded, and that's the reason I went to law school.
Was it a good decision?
Well, I wasn't a great law student, per se. I think I know where you're going next with this. Okay. So I wasn't a great law student because, again, I was less concerned about getting the grade, and I was more concerned about the acquisition of skill set. And so what I realized, though, was it's really important to get an articling position after law school. But in order to get a good articling position, meaning working in a law firm, you had to have good grades, which I didn't really have. I wasn't a bad student, but I had basically straight B's in law school. And I realized that I had to do something to stand out in law school so that law firms in Toronto, which apparently is where everyone was going to article, and I was told that Toronto was the place to go to article, you'll get the best experience, I had to do something to stand out. So to stand out, I did this. I sued Facebook. Not kidding. I sued Facebook. And I that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I brought a privacy complaint with the Privacy Commissioner of Canada against Facebook. What I did was, this is my best buddy here, Jordan Plenner. Him and I realized that Facebook was starting to put out these mini apps. So Farmville, for example, or Zynga was one of those mini apps. One of the things that we discovered was that when you were downloading, as a user of Facebook, when you were downloading a particular app, the app that we used was, do you guys remember Hannah Montana, the TV show? Right? There was a Hannah Montana app. The Hannah Montana app was targeting teenage girls. That's who their target audience was. And the app itself wasn't a sophisticated app. All the app really did was it gave you different quotes from Hannah Montana, the TV show. But even though the app required no information to function properly, it collected all the information from the person downloading it. And in those days, on Facebook, they would ask you to upload your school schedule. They would ask you about sexual preference. They would ask all this very personal information, despite the fact that the app itself did not require it for the proper functioning. Now, in the US, there is no internet privacy legislation. You can take that if you want.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Hope it's your wife or something. Yeah. But in Canada, we have something called PIPEDA. And we actually do have internet privacy legislation in Canada. And so we brought this claim against Facebook. The Privacy Commissioner ended up siding with us. And I was plastered all over all these different newspapers all over Canada, and frankly around the world, for a number of weeks. And I was able to get the job that I needed because of that. So it's by the way, it's way easier just to get good grades. Way easier. But something else happened in law school that I want to mention, which is that, and I sort of neglected this, but it's an important piece of context, and I think it could be helpful. The t-shirt company that I had in undergrad required face-to-face salespersonship. It required that I flew to Dalhousie, and I flew to UBC, and I flew to London, Ontario to go to Western to meet student council face-to-face. And it didn't matter because undergrad, if you show up for the exam and you, at least at Concordia, you did well, you passed. Law school used something called the Socratic method, which, show of hands, how many of you know what that is? Okay. The Socratic method is effectively a professor yells out someone's name randomly, and you have to answer the question. And in law school, if you weren't there or you didn't answer it properly, you actually could fail the course. So law school required me actually to go to class. Shocker, right? So I realized that this t-shirt business that I had wasn't going to last because I wasn't able to travel and meet these schools face to face in the same way that I was able to do in undergrad. So I realized what I actually needed was a business that ran virtually. While I was in class, in the background, it was making money. Now, in 2005, there were two ways to sell a physical product on the internet. Two ways, very simple. One way was you'd pay a big company like IBM or Oracle or SAP $1 million, that's actually what it cost, to build you an online store. So in Canada, for example, Walmart.ca, Canadian Tire, Sears.ca, those are all built by what's called IBM WebSphere in those days. It was very expensive, but you're able to do that. If you didn't have $1 million, which I did not have, the other way to sell a product on the internet in 2005 was a marketplace. Etsy, Amazon, eBay, one of those. And although those were inexpensive, they didn't actually allow you to build your own brand because you were effectively renting customers from those marketplaces. So I knew that I needed to move my business online, this future business online, but I didn't have $1 million, and I didn't want to sell on Amazon or eBay. Jeff Bezos has famously said, "Your profit margin is my opportunity," and I didn't want to do that. So serendipitously, I met an entrepreneur when I moved to Ottawa in 2005. Again, I didn't know anyone when I moved there except this one mentor, Phil Reimer. But I met an entrepreneur when I moved to Ottawa named Toby. And Toby had just moved to Canada a year or two earlier from Germany. He fell in love with a girl, and she was living in Ottawa, so he moved to Canada. When you are a new immigrant in Canada, or frankly anywhere, it is very difficult to get a job. So he decided what he would do was, he's in Canada, lots of snow, he would start selling snowboards on the internet. But he had the same dilemma as I did, which was he couldn't afford $1 million spend on an enterprise software platform, and he didn't want to sell on a marketplace. But Toby's much smarter than I am. And so he said, I'm just going to write my own piece of software, because he's a developer, to sell these snowboards online. And he did. He created a snowboard store called Snow Devil. And very quickly, people started asking him, like me, if they can use his software to sell their own products. And I ended up talking to him and telling him about this conundrum that I had, which was I needed to make money during law school. My t-shirt business was not scaling offline. I needed to move it online. And I ended up building this thing.
Well,
Oops, back.
sorry.
All right. I ended up building store number 136 on what is today Shopify. It was called smoofer.com. And it was great because I would be sitting in tax law class, like super boring. And all the while, virtually, this t-shirt business was making money for me. And so I sort of fell in love with it. Now the problem is, he's going to show you something, Michael's going to show you something in a second. I didn't have any money for online advertising. But what I did have was crazy friends. And so what I did was, I asked my friends to create really stupid YouTube videos to promote my t-shirt business, like this.
Got my Smoofer shirt in the mail today.
10 days after sending the order away.
Check out this thing, you know I'm looking legit.
So fly, I forgot about this humongous sit.
What kind of mood am I in today?
Should I put on this shirt and take your troubles away?
From Gotham to the street, anywhere in the world.
He's a G.I. Joe guy.
I'm a G.I. Joe girl.
So what you waiting for?
You know you heard the news.
Movers make you an offer you can't refuse.
You know, what's amazing is, at the time, it was really stupid. And now that it's aged, it's still really stupid. But you clap for it because you realize that, like, it's just ridiculous. But this is how I did marketing for smoofer.com. And that was sort of the way that I got into online retail and online commerce.
So I think Shopify is about to come onto the horizon here. So did you start as the CEO, the COO? What did you start as?
No, so I finished graduate school, and I moved to Toronto to article at this firm, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I won't even mention the name of the firm because that's how much I hated it. The way that this particular law firm would allocate work to students, to articling students, would be they would put files on your chair. And I would come in Monday morning, and depending on how big the stack was on my chairs, that's how I knew how bad my day was going to be. It was proportionate. The higher the stack, the worse my day was going to be. I was living in Toronto. I knew it was 10 months, and I hated every second of it. For me, entrepreneurship and law were sort of the polar opposites. Entrepreneurship was a real meritocracy. It didn't matter who you were, what your last name was, how much money you had. It mattered about how much value did you create, how much creativity did you have, how much grit and hustle and chutzpah did you have. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. But the legal profession was all about tenure. It meant how long you were there. If you were there for 5 years, the work that you were given was appropriate to a fifth-year lawyer. And if you were there 8 years, you'd have 8-year type work. So even though I was really entrepreneurial and I thought that I was able to do a lot there, I was really told to wait my turn. Son, basically. Hey, son, wait your turn. And I really didn't like it. And actually, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, would visit me in Toronto. And I remember saying to her that I don't know what I'm going to do. That after the 10 months are over, I don't know what I'm going to do. But whatever it is, the worst night of the week for me, by the way, when I was at the law firm, was Sunday nights. I hated Sunday nights because I knew Monday morning was coming. And I know there's terms like Sunday scaries, and there's terms that people talk about feeling on Sunday, but it was way worse for me. I had so much anxiety on Sunday about Monday that it was almost not manageable. And I began to really hate work, which was weird for me because I always loved working. I always loved having all these things happening. And I said to Lindsay, whatever I do next, my Sunday night must absolutely feel like my Friday nights. Simple test. If my Sunday night feels like my Friday night, you know the way you feel on Friday night, Saturday's coming, you can sleep in, you can go out. That's really what I wanted. And if I had that, I was going to be set. And in 2009, I called Toby, who's at that point had probably under 1,000 stores on Shopify, and I said, I would like to come join you and a couple others. They were all engineers for the most part, and I want to help you build a real business and really scale this business that is Shopify. I knew that what I had done using the Shopify software, building a really amazing store called Smoofer, it was really meaningful to me. And if I could help others do it, and I can feel that I'm building a great company and I can be entrepreneurial, that would be something that would be really, really cool. And so in early 2010, I moved to Ottawa, and I joined Shopify as effectively the Swiss Army knife. I was general counsel because I was a lawyer. We didn't have a CFO, so I did finance stuff. I did sales and marketing. I did everything. In fact, I even did this. I even swept the floors. Now, people will joke today that I swept the floors once, and I had someone take a picture of it just so I could use this photo. But that's what, I mean, this is early 2010 at Shopify, but I just was Swiss Army knife. And what I felt my role was at the point was just add value. Forget the title. We had no money, so they couldn't pay me a big salary. Forget the title, forget this salary, but just add as much value as I could. And actually, the only thing that Shopify was able to give me really was equity, a piece of the business. I was able to become an owner of the company. And that was 9 or 10 years ago. And that was the early days of Shopify. And I love this picture because, I don't know, it's just cool for me to see that.
I'm sure. So let's talk about Shopify. I mean, an extraordinary journey from when you started to what, like $100 billion in sales? I mean, it's
$100 billion. Yeah, 800,000 stores have sold $100 billion on Shopify, and as of today, we are the most valued technology company in the country.
Wow. And I'm sure people are going to have a lot of questions about it, but talk to us a bit about where you started and how the company grew. And
so I think that company building is the best way to accomplish a goal. If you want to do something really meaningful, I think one of the best ways to accomplish that goal is through the idea of a company. And what is a company? A company is a set of individuals, hopefully very smart, ambitious, talented individuals, who are all pointing in the same direction, pulling that objective from point A to point B. And I think what we've built is something that allows anybody on the planet that has some ambition to build a business. Now remember, the software that Shopify provides in 2010, but even today, the software had existed previously, right? I said IBM was offering it, but the problem was the people that were able to access and use software like that were only the biggest retailers and biggest companies on the planet. A small business or an aspiring entrepreneur never had access to these tools. And so if you were someone who made beautiful water glasses in 1950 or 1980 or 2005, and you want to get these water glasses into the hands of consumers, you would have to call a buyer up at some retailer, some big company, and you would have to convince a retail buyer there to put it on the shelves of their store. And then you as an end consumer can go and buy it. The reason you had to do it in that way was the retailers had distribution. They had physical stores all over the place. What the internet provided was everyone now has distribution. And so what effectively had happened was retail and commerce became disintermediated, so that anyone that has a product or frankly a service can now get into the hands of people that want that product or that service at a global scale. And so the original tagline of Shopify was a shop in minutes, a business for life. And I think what ended up happening was not only did we help anyone that had a business build their business and grow their business and sell to a global audience, but I think we've taken people that had some aspiration, who in the shower in the morning think of these crazy ideas, and we've given them the tool to actually go and commercialize those things. And the neat part about what we've done is, of those 800,000 stores on the platform, the majority of them are people that were just like me when I was setting up that t-shirt business. We have some big brands now. Kylie Jenner was on the front cover of Forbes recently as being the youngest billionaire, the youngest self-made billionaire, and there's some controversy of whether or not Kylie Jenner is self-made or not, but that's for Q&A. But Kylie Jenner was able to build a $600 million a year business selling lipstick on Shopify. That's a great story, but she's Kylie Jenner, and her brother-in-law is Kanye. My brother-in-law is not Kanye. My sister's not Kim Kardashian. But what's really neat is the long tail of these merchants, these people, these entrepreneurs were able to build great business on our platform. And over time, over the last 10 years or so, we've grown the business beyond just helping people sell online to allow people to sell offline as well. So now you can come to Shopify and you can sign up for an account for $29 a month. And you can sell in a physical store with our point of sale product. You can sell online. You can sell on Instagram or Facebook or Amazon or eBay. But it all feeds back into one centralized place. And really what we've done is we've created this retail operating system. And beyond that, now we're helping merchants with their shipping and their payments, and we're giving out capital. And so what we're trying to do is we're really trying to democratize or bend the learning curve into entrepreneurship so that anyone and everyone that wants to do so can do so. And I mentioned like shipping and payments. I just want to take a second on that for a second. Years ago, if you were an entrepreneur and you wanted to go and you wanted to ship something, you would go to your local Canada Post and you would ask for commercial rates, and they would give you regular retail commercial rates. What we realized was that if we go to Canada Post and we negotiate on behalf of hundreds of thousands of merchants in aggregate, we can actually get those economies of scale and transfer them directly to those entrepreneurs. So that an entrepreneur who's starting today is getting almost the same pricing on shipping as some of the biggest companies. And the payments rate for credit card processing are almost the same rate as the biggest companies. And we've given out about $400 million in cash advances to these merchants. These people cannot walk into a bank and get money, but because we know so much about their business, we can actually make underwriting decisions very, very quickly. And so all that to be said, I think what we've done is we've democratized entrepreneurship, and we've done that in like 175 countries.
Wow. So, so we're going to go to the audience soon, but there's just a couple other moments here. So that's 2010.
Yep.
So 5 years later.
Yep. I still get goosebumps with this picture. I'm not an emotional guy. I will admit I cried on the stage of the New York Stock Exchange. The way this works is you're kind of on a podium, and below you are all your family and friends. And it was just this incredible opportunity, but that's when we took the company public on the New York Stock Exchange. And for an entrepreneur, I mean, that's one of the greatest moments. I mean, that's where Henry Ford and the Rockefellers stood. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs ever to exist stood on that podium and rang that bell, and we did that. And it was a very special day for us.
I bet. So, not a small company that you have anymore.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah, all right.
So we are now 4,000 people, more than 4,000 people that work at Shopify. I believe that's larger than the student body here.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
But you can see me in front, sort of hugging some of the people around me. But I love this picture because Shopify is a collection of people and some of the most passionate, hardworking, talented people I've ever encountered. And actually, what I like about this photo is we've grown a lot from a couple people to over 4,000. But what I like about this group is that with every new hire at Shopify, the average quality of our team goes up. And it's a pretty special place when you have 4,500 people all pulling in the same direction across 12 offices around the world. And that's, I think you're actually not even seeing the whole thing because it's cut off. But it's pretty cool.
So when we were setting things up, Scott Stoddard took a look at this, and he actually recognized somebody.
It's amazing that Scott was able to find a friend of his that he went to school with at Bishop's, actually, Edward Ocampo Gooding, in the photo somewhere. Although I think Edward's actually cut off because it's too big. But yeah, I can't express the feeling that I have to see a photo like this because it's really meaningful. I'm doing my life's work, and I'm doing it with people that I really care about.
Is it a challenge to run a global business out of a relatively small city on the Ottawa River?
I would say actually I think a lot of companies that have gone down the Shopify path at some point would have moved to Silicon Valley.
Right.
We didn't do that because we actually quite like Ottawa. Frankly, we really like Canada. We want to stay here. The only disadvantage I can think of is raising capital was a little bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. Prior to going public, we'd raised over 3 rounds, about $117 million, the largest round being from Omers Ventures. I would say other than that, no. I think that there is a benefit to being the greatest company in a particular region, or the best company to work for in a region. If we were in Silicon Valley, I think we'd be competing for talent with Facebook and Google and all these big, all the FANGs, all the biggest companies on the planet. And I actually think there's a real advantage to being in a place like Sherbrooke or Ottawa, or not necessarily like New York City or Silicon Valley. And I wish more companies thought of it that way. I think there's a cargo cult that pulls you to Silicon Valley, and I'm not sure Shopify would be where we are today if we had gone down there. Loyalty is much higher. Our ability to recruit talent is amazing. Great schools in Ottawa and around Canada. And it's pretty easy to be focused when it's -40 outside, I think. And so we've been able to do that as well. But no, I actually think Canada and Ottawa has been a competitive advantage to us. I don't believe it's been a disadvantage to us at all.
Interesting. Okay. I want to touch on just a couple of things beyond Shopify, and then we'll go to Q&A. So you've been on this show on the CBC?
On the CBC.
Next Gen Den. Right?
I thought, so this is a clip of one of the episodes of Next Gen Den.
I think I'm overpaying because you guys have had a previous success, and that troubles me.
Okay.
If this was your first time doing it, you wouldn't ask me to pay on a $5 million valuation.
That was pretty fun. That was pretty fun.
So what's the best investment you made on that show? Or the worst?
This is being recorded, Michael.
Okay.
I can't say that. But actually, what that did do was, I did realize, though, that sometimes what a lot of entrepreneurs need, and those of you, just show of hands, how many in the audience self-identify as an entrepreneur? Okay. I don't actually think what many of us that are entrepreneurs need is capital or a business plan. I actually think what we need is someone believing in us. And actually, one of the best things that I got out of the Dragon's Den experience for me as a sort of a mini dragon was I was able to give people a little bit of I was able to put some wind in their sails and say, I'm not going to invest in this, or I am, but this is a cool business. You should see this to fruition. One of the things that people don't realize is the cost of failure in entrepreneurship right now is the lowest it's ever been. You can start a store on Shopify or any other company for $29, and if it works, you scale it. And if it doesn't, you pivot and try something else. But that was very different than my grandfather setting up shop selling eggs in 1959, when if he didn't make it, the house was gone. There was no food on the table. And so I actually feel that there's a renaissance happening right now around entrepreneurship because the cost of failure is just so small now, which means that anyone can do it. I really love that, but that's one of the best lessons for me from Dragon's Den.
You've had such an extraordinary career. Have you ever faced any doubts about yourself in all of this, or has it just been you've just been focusing on the next thing and confident about it, or have you had moments of doubt, and how have you dealt with it?
So it's funny, right? You sit on these stages and you give these talks and you talk about the successes, but there is no slide with the nurses' uniform company that failed. I had a watch winder company that failed. I had a poker chip company that failed. You don't talk about that stuff. And actually, it's important to say that. I'm glad you asked the question. There has been 2 or 3 things that have really worked out, and luckily I've covered the cost of those that didn't. But for every t-shirt company or Shopify that I've worked on, there's probably been a dozen others that did not work. And what I've tried to do is, there's this great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It talks about sort of the difference of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And I've always tried to have a growth mindset about these things, whereby every time these things fail, I look at it I look at failure as the successful acquisition of something new. And if I can do that, then I can bounce back from it. That's the first thing. Second thing is this whole self-doubt thing. I am still working on that now. I think when I was younger, I made up for doubt with ego and bravado, but it was totally artificial. And actually, as I get older right now, and I'm a new dad, and I sort of realized that being humble and being modest actually can go a long way. And admitting that, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, has been really valuable for me. In fact, people want to help me more when I say I don't know what I'm doing. When I say that I'm not sure about this sort of thing, people want to help. And when I sort of act as if I have all the answers, I don't know. It doesn't. I don't get the same sort of value. And so I've tried to become really comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is the first thing, which is not natural. I've tried to have this sort of growth mindset about life, and I've tried to surround myself with people that are just. That's why I like hanging out with you, people that are better than me. You're not my principal, so I don't say anything nice. But I try to surround myself with people that are better and smarter than I am, and I think that's been incredibly helpful to me.
Well, thank you for saying that. So I don't think we can finish this personal journey without doing a little bit of personal and even more personal. And I understand you're not the only entrepreneur in the family.
That's right. One of the greatest joys of my life is my wife started an ice cream company last year called Sunday School, and that's my wife in her ice cream shop. If any of you are in Ottawa, it's on Beechwood. She'd kill me for not giving her the plug. Go check it out. But she started an ice cream company, and of course my 2-year-old Bailey started her own ice cream company, which is great. And the next photo, it has no relevance to this talk, but I just wanted to put up there because I have a newborn at home, and her name is Zoe, and that's Zoe. So, yeah.
Bravo. All right. Okay, so I'm ready for questions. Anyone have a question they want to put to Harley?
There's some mics there.
Quick question. I know you've listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Do you want to tell the story about why you didn't list on the NASDAQ instead?
You know the answer to that story. That's why you're asking it. It's a lot more tough with all these people in front of me. So you can list when you're filing a U.S. IPO. You can list on the Nasdaq or the NYSE. And actually, one of the reasons we listed on NYSE was because Nasdaq, when we went in for the meeting, they had the wrong logo up of Shopify. But actually, that's not the full story. The real story is that the other part of the story is that it felt more real to stand at the New York Stock Exchange than it did to push a button at Nasdaq. And I'm sure at some point this video is going to leak and the NASDAQ executives will say, well, what happened? And it just, there was something as an entrepreneur that felt different about standing on the same podium as the most incredible, iconic entrepreneur stood. And that's actually why we picked the NYSE. There wasn't any business reasons other than it was just a feeling. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, okay. How are companies within Shopify supposed to deal with competition amongst each other?
You mean stores on the platform?
Yeah, so if they have the same product.
Yeah. I actually think that one of the cool parts about new retail, or like commerce as it is today, is it's not a zero-sum game. And actually, I think that's very different than the past. So for example, if you had 2 stores in Sherbrooke that sold glasses, beautiful water glasses, they would be in competition with each other. But if you and your neighbor are starting an online store selling water glasses, you may decide that your target demographic is the West Coast of the US, and she may decide her target demographic is Europe. And I think that's actually the best part about commerce online right now is you don't have to pick a particular region or geography. It's less competitive. And actually what I would suggest is you two get together and figure out how you can help each other with marketing. If you're making this amazing video of the strength of this particular glass, maybe she can use that video to market her products in California while you're off marketing in France or something. And I think that actually creates, that community is really great. It's one of the reasons that I think now, more than ever, entrepreneurs are very willing to share best practices. Whereas I think if you go back 10 or 20 or 30 years, you wouldn't have that. People were very guarded about what worked for them. They wouldn't want to sort of give up their secret sauce. I would say, however, though, that the number one differentiator across the top stores on Shopify, whether it's Allbirds or it's Bombas or Fashion Nova or Yeezy or any of these stores, Movement Watches, is that they have a real story to tell. They're not just selling watches or selling shoes. There's a real story to it. When you go to the Allbirds site, before you can even buy something, you actually have to read the story of why they created Allbirds. And so immediately there's an emotional connection to it.
Yes, Jeff.
Hi, my name is Gabriel.
And first of all, I want to thank you to be here. And my question is, what would be your advice about facing fears and just making sure to keep that motivation to keep on going, whatever you feel? Just, do you have any tips on putting it aside and just get back to your goals and keep on focusing?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. I actually have a very simple answer. It's tribe. Do you have a tribe of your own? Do you have a group of people that you're meeting with? Let's say you want to start a company. I'm sure there's some others, people in here that want to do it as well. I think you guys should meet up at a coffee shop every Thursday and just commiserate. Don't even talk about your business plans. Just talk about the stuff that sucks about starting a business right now. Talk about how expensive it is to do online advertising. Talk about the fact that you wake up in cold sweats because you're using your tuition checks to buy online advertising or whatever. I think creating a tribe for yourselves of people that are like-minded is one of the most important things, and it's free. And by the way, you have the greatest candidates for your tribe sitting around you right now. And I think, so once you can identify who can be in your tribe and you can bring that all together, I still meet a group of entrepreneurs constantly. Zoe, who's now 6 weeks old, is her second child, and I'm full candor, I'm really struggling with having a second child. 1 to 2 is like exponentially more difficult for my wife and I. It's not a little bit more difficult, way more difficult. And so now I have actually a tribe of and this is all cultivated in the last like 10 days, of a couple other moms and dads who we have dinner with who also just had their second child. And we don't even tell each other to do this or to do that or to change the sleeping cycle. We just get together to commiserate. And honestly, it's probably a complaining festival, right? But it really works well. And I've done that in so many different aspects of my life, whether it's business or personal, or when I was getting married and I was proposing to Lindsay, I found other people who were also thinking about proposing. And in that case, it wasn't commiseration. It was, how are you going to do it? Are you going to get a photographer? Where are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? Are you going to carry the ring with you in your pocket through the custom line if you're traveling? I think creating tribe is super important, and I don't think people leverage that nearly enough.
Thank you very much. This is really interesting. I'm Michelle. I'm a professor of religion here at Bishop's. I do notice that you didn't recommend, or you didn't regret that you didn't take a religion course.
Actually,
Harvey.
By the way, I absolutely
Harley.
put religion there, and not even my own religion. But I just think that the opportunity of undergraduate studies is you can have a well-rounded education. And great pitch, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. It was quite touching to hear you talk about your employees. I'm curious to know, what are the qualities you look for in an individual that make you say, yes, I want to work with that person, or I want them to work for me?
I'm going to disappoint you because it's not that complicated. It's a single thing: resourcefulness. The reason that we love hiring at Shopify founders, people that have started something, I didn't say successful founder, I just said founders, is because people that are founders of things, whether it's an organization, it's the tennis club at their school, it's whatever, tend to be very resourceful. It means they can do a lot with a little. And I would say resourcefulness is probably unequivocally the most important trait we look for when hiring someone. In fact, I have personally hired the person who is resourceful over the Harvard MBA a number of times because I didn't believe the Harvard MBA, in this particular case, was going to be resourceful enough. And I think resourcefulness is super, super important for a fast-growing company, which is why it's great if you participated on the tennis team, but what if there wasn't a tennis team at your school and you believe there should have been? I would love to hire the person that actually said, I'm going to go and create that. Or what if there's an organization or a particular cause and you don't believe are getting enough funding, and so instead of just participating in the walkathon, you created the walkathon. I think that in itself is probably the most powerful trait that I would look for.
Hi, Harley.
Hi.
All right, my question is pretty simple. I was wondering, how do you define happiness?
It's a great question. I'm actually over happiness. And I'm not trying to be, to be negative about it, but for a long time I was seeking happiness. And then I realized I'd stubbed my toe, and all of a sudden I wasn't happy for 20 minutes. Or I'd be in traffic and I wasn't happy for 20 minutes. And actually, I'm a fairly happy guy. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm an extrovert. I like being around people. But actually, what I'm searching for now is more meaning. I want meaningfulness. And if I find everything that I'm doing feels meaningful, I'm good. The reason that I like the Friday night to Sunday night litmus test, which, by the way, all of you should think about yourselves, is if your Sunday night feels like your Friday night, you're probably doing something really meaningful on Monday. And if it doesn't, you're probably not. Now, there are some tricks that I've adopted for being more mindful and more meaningful. I can meditate every morning. That works for me. I fast a lot. Sometimes I don't eat for a whole day. I just drink water. That works for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone. I'm not trying to go all Tim Ferriss on you, but these are the things that kind of work for me. But actually, I find that happiness is often fleeting. And if I find everything I'm doing is meaningful, I'm good. And so that's really what I'm searching for right now. But, I mean, there are things that make me really happy. Spending time with my family makes me really happy. Being at the cottage makes me really happy. Closing a big deal at the company makes me really happy. But if I want to be happy all the time, I think I'm going to be really disappointed. Bless you.
Hello. Okay. Hey Harvey. I was wondering what your opinion was on the like drop shipping and print on demand websites. I know it's something that kind of in the market people think that it's maybe getting like a bit clustered and that there's a lot of competition. Yep. And it's not as big as it was when it started. So I was just wondering, as like the CEO, what you thought about that.
Great question. I'm going to go back to this thing here. This store, smoofer.com, when I started it, I think I had like $3,000 or $4,000, and I bought all this inventory. And my apartment in law school was filled with t-shirts. If I was building Smoofer today, I absolutely would start with dropshipping. Why? Because I would need to test the market. And so I wouldn't have made as much money from a profit margin perspective, but I wouldn't have had to put all my money into inventory. I could have put it into growth and marketing activities. So I think dropshipping or print on demand are a great way to test product market fit. And if you do, then you can go buy inventory. But I would say that one of the greatest things to have ever happened to entrepreneurship, particularly in terms of apparel and physical product entrepreneurship, is dropshipping and print on demand. If you tomorrow morning have this crazy idea for an amazing t-shirt, I do not think you should go and make 100 t-shirts. I think you should go to Printful or Printify or any of these print on demand companies and put up a picture on your online store, and every time someone buys it, it triggers a call to the print on demand company in Idaho, and they ship it directly to the customer. And that happens 10 or 20 times over the course of the next few weeks. Then you go to the print company and then you make inventory. But I think print on demand and drop shipping further bend the learning curve into entrepreneurship because it doesn't cost any money. And I'm a big fan of it. I know it gets a bad reputation because people get disappointed that it's not like, I don't think you can run a business that is entirely print on demand forever or drop shipping forever. But I think it's a great way to get started. I have a friend named Jake, two friends, Jake and Kramer. They were founders of Movement Watches, MVMT watches. They started in 2013 on Shopify making these really cool watches, MVMT, like $150 watches, really nice watches. It was all drop shipped. And then they realized they had product market fit, and they began to buy inventory. And 8 weeks ago, Movado bought them for $200 million in cash. Not kidding, look it up. That company started drop shipping, and at a certain point they realized they had product market fit, and they flipped the switch, and then they decided to hold their own inventory. That's the way I'd look at those things. Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about definition, what's your definition of entrepreneurship? There's a lot out there, but what would be yours?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a more official definition if you go to Wikipedia. My definition of entrepreneurship is creating something from nothing. And I don't just mean like a physical thing from nothing. I mean, I want to be a DJ. No one would hire me. I use entrepreneurship to solve that problem. I need to pay for undergrad. I use entrepreneurship to solve that problem. I created something, and it helped me. I don't think everyone does entrepreneurship for the same reason. So let's go back to my grandfather again. He did not do entrepreneurship out of any passion. The way that I'm passionate about Shopify, he wasn't passionate about eggs. I don't actually care about eggs. But he was passionate about putting food on the table for his young family as new immigrants to Canada. There are other entrepreneurs that are passionate, truly passionate about the products they're making. There are artists that are passionate about the products they're making. So I would say that if you say it's about passion or it's about changing the world, that seems a little bit grandiose. I think entrepreneurship is the greatest way to solve a problem and create something from nothing. Yeah. I can hear you.
But they may not be able to.
Okay, that's good. All right. I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much. My question is, what is Shopify's moat? So you spoke about your t-shirt company not having an effective moat, but how does it keep from being disrupted?
It's a really good question. It's the thing I think about every day, all day long. Part of it is that the software that we have built, if you know how to use email, you can build a store on Shopify within 30 minutes. That in itself is competitive advantage, but that doesn't mean everyone's not going to do it. That's competitive advantage. Also, it's very scalable. So the idea that you can start on Shopify when you're very small, doing drop shipping, but then you can grow to do $1 billion a year on our platform and never have to leave, that scalability is another competitive advantage. So you can go ahead and write a piece of software tonight that could help people build an online store fairly quickly. But what happens when they have a flash sale? What happens when, Kith, for example, or the new Yeezys drop? Probably fails over. So I think for us, our competitive advantage is really technology, or at least initially was technology. I think now our competitive advantage is the fact that, how many of you saw my augmented reality demo today? Okay, a bunch of you. So I showed a few earlier today. I showed some of the people in the crowd augmented reality. We've been working on augmented reality for 5 years now, and only in the last couple of weeks can I show someone a demo. So what we try to do, additional competitive advantages, we try to be ahead of the curve so that when augmented reality is something that people demand, we're there, we're ready. Whereas I believe most of the other players in our space are beginning to think about augmented reality right now. And I think we have a certain courage that we are happy to invest, at this point, millions of dollars into something that we think is going to come later on, even if we're not going to see the fruits of those labors for a long time. But I would say probably the core of our moat is our tech. It's really, really good technology, which is why if you are thinking about building a business or starting a company, I think most people make the mistake of starting a company with people just like them. I can tell you the people that I spend most of my time with today, I would not have been friends with in high school. I was class president, I was DJing, I was very extroverted. The people that I work with on a daily basis are far more cerebral than I am, a lot smarter, much more introverted. We would not have been friends in high school. But the combination of all of us, think of us like the Avengers. They make amazing product. They're able to build great software. And then I can go and commercialize the hell out of it. And so when you're thinking about who to do business with and who to be co-founders with, think about people that have complementary skill sets, not similar skill sets. So if you are a great salesperson like I am, I think I am, work with a great engineer, and then bring a great designer, and then bring a great person who cares about the community. And that's who you should start a company with. But if you're going to start a company with the person that you've been hanging out with for the last 20 years, you're probably going to have the same skill sets. Yeah, maybe one more. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Santiago. Just have a simple question. How do you manage your time? Or how do you achieve your goals? And if not, what happened? What do you consider as the most important things?
I schedule absolutely everything. Everything in my life, including 10 minutes a morning to meditate, is scheduled. Date night with my wife is scheduled. A walk with my dog I schedule everything. Now, by the way, that may sound totally pathetic. You don't have to do that, but that's how I make sure that I stay effective. I'm looking after this company. I have the honor of being on the board of the CBC with Michael. I have 2 young children. I have hobbies and passions. I schedule absolutely everything. And then, if I'm doing something that I find is not meaningful or isn't, I don't want to go all, Marie Kondo on you. But if it doesn't give me joy, I'm not going to do it. I'm just done. I'm not going to do that anymore. But I find that actually putting things in, if you want to get good at going to the gym, put it in your calendar. And also, reduce friction. I was trying to go to the gym for the first 5 years of Shopify. Almost every day, I never made it. It's because my gym was out of the way. Instead, I found a gym that I don't love so much, but it's literally on the way home. And so I have to pass it to get to my house. And so I find scheduling and friction reduction to be 2 things that have, for me, have been helpful in creating really good habits. And also, make sure you're sleeping. This whole bravado of startup founders and people in tech don't sleep. That's bullshit. Having a good night's sleep is one of the greatest ways to be productive and effective.
Let's do just one last one.
Okay. You're the boss.
I was wondering if were your parents and friends and family always supportive of you when you first decided not to go back to where you're going to go and stay in Montreal and like start up your company?
Some were not. One of the things that I had done, this is a little bit controversial, my wife and I both did when we got married, was we identified who in our lives was actually making us better and who in our lives were making us worse. And the ones that were making us worse, we actually gave them a term. We called them energy vampires. And some of them were family members. And we actually called them and said, you're going to see less of us. And the reason is we have very big ambitions and very big plans for our lives. And we simply cannot have you in our life anymore. And a couple of them said, who do you think you are? Like, I'm your great uncle. I was like, I don't care who you are. You are not making my life better. And the people that have been supportive, we've doubled down on. We spend more of our time with those people. There's a book that talks about you become the 5 people you surround yourself with. I really believe that. But I think this concept of energy vampires, we all feel like we have a childhood friend or someone in our family who, every time we leave their company, we leave them, we don't feel better, we feel worse about ourselves. Well, I'm trying to make myself, I want to be the best version of Harley. And Lindsay wants to be the best version of herself. And we want to be the best version of our family. And so we actually have painstakingly curated people out of our lives who did not make us better. And I don't call them energy vampires because that's rude, but I make it very clear that you're just going to see less of me now. And some of them think it's ridiculous, and I have childhood friends who just, probably think that I'm full of myself or think that something's wrong with me. But I'm trying to do this thing, and this thing is really tough, to have a great family and a great business and live my best life. And I think actually figuring out who in your life are energy vampires and then cutting them out is very, very controversial, but very effective. What a place to end.
Okay. That's nice. That's nice.
Thank you guys so much.
Can I just say, I love this version of Harley. Okay? So thank you so much, and it's really been a meaningful evening. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
That was a good time.